Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking to an SLP who is a private practice owner, and we're talking about AAC and how AAC might not always be appropriate for every child. I know it's a really controversial topic, and a lot of people have different opinions about these things, but I would love for you to listen to this video and share your thoughts with me. Hi, Kelly. Thank you so much for coming on here and with me today. I'm so excited to be able to just chat a little bit more about connection-based therapy and AAC. So why don't you introduce yourself?
So I'm Kelly Schatz. I am in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I own a therapy clinic called Resolute Therapy Collaborative. And I have been a speech therapist for about 7 years. And I recently discovered within the last 3 years or so connection-based therapy, and then just recently completed my DIR floor time training. And so it's really just opened my eyes into what relationship first therapy looks like and how to build connection when working with autistic children.
Right, great. I love that so much. So tell me the differences between before you established working through connection and you got the floor time training. What were your sessions like before that?
Yeah, so, I always followed somewhat of a play-based approach. But before learning, about how to establish connection and getting interaction, I felt like my sessions were very toy-based. So it was like, oh, I'm playing, but I had all my toys, and I thought that sessions were play-based if I was using toys. And, sessions often felt like I was following a child around and we weren't getting much done. And I just was like following them around and trying to get them to interact with me and this toy. And they wanted nothing to do with the toy. And it was more just like the child pacing and then me struggling to find something to engage us. And so that's when I was just kind of like, there's got to be something else out here to help me find connection with a lot of the kids I was struggling with finding connection with. And so that's kind of how it took me down this floor time and connection first relationship model. And then once I learned more about that and learned how to interact with kids using more like sensory motor play and movement play and getting rid of the toys and figuring out how to help them interact with just me, I just saw so much improvement in engagement in sessions, and I just never went back.
Yeah, it's hard
So,
to go back once you start
yeah.
to connect with kids like that and you don't really need any outside toys. It's just the relationship that drives the interaction. It's so rewarding and hard to look back on your old
Yeah,
times of how you did things.
sure it is.
So let's talk a little bit about AAC because I know that it's a hot topic and it does ruffle some people's feathers. Everyone has an opinion about AAC, and I think it's important to think about the parent, not just what your opinion as a professional is. But talk to me a little bit about how you are currently utilizing AAC in your practice now, or what are you doing to be able to support that?
Yeah, so I'm a definite proponent for AAC. Obviously, I have seen it be so incredibly helpful for a lot of children. But I've also noticed over the years of trying to implement AAC, we're told every kid gets AAC and like high tech is best and most robust communication system. And I do think that's great. But what I found is like there ends up being lack of buy-in from the parent, or you're using the device and you're modeling on it in sessions, but the child has not even looked at it or interacted with the AAC device. And so it's something that's important that maybe will grow with the child, but you find yourself in sessions being more distracted by the device than actually focusing on getting the interaction and engagement with the child. And so something that I've just kind of learned over time is there's nothing wrong with like having the AAC there and kind of using it, but I've actually started using it more as a support in my session for kids that are still really working on regulation, engagement, interaction, and less as like my goal for the session of using AAC. And I found that, if I really reflected on sessions, there was a lot of times where we were having a great connected moment. And then I turned to the device to try and find something to model, and I completely lost the connection because, I was too much focused on like, I got to get this child to use their device or see my models or something like that. And then I found those moments. So I think this is an interesting topic to talk about and to consider, you know, are all kids necessarily needing that high-tech AAC as their main goal and priority of a session.
Right. I think that's what has to be discussed and talked about. I do agree. I think that AAC is so beneficial for so many kids and so many families pick up on it so quickly and it just becomes a part of their everyday life, which is beautiful and amazing. But then you
Mhm.
have other kids that struggle to even regulate or interact at all. And you have a parent that you're throwing this high-tech device at and they're trying to get their child to point to these pictures when really foundationally they're not even interacting with their child yet.
Right.
I think those kids, those types of families are the ones that, in my opinion, should be focusing on interaction first and
Yeah.
engagement, showing the parent how to really regulate the child before AAC is given. Because
Right.
you just risk getting a child that can just request and they request and that's really all they can do. But there's so much more can be done when a child really learns to interact. What
Mhm.
about, like your experience before floor time, when, before you were trained in this connection-based approach, how did you see AAC that same way? Or talk to me about your views on that before your training.
No, before my training, I feel like I saw AAC as, well, really before everything, like before I really understood how to like model without expectation, all of those things. I honestly started my career with more of like an ABA type of
Mhm.
lens, like where that's how I was taught in graduate school. That's how my supervisors taught me, more of like a reinforcement model. So, like using the AAC, the child goes up on the slide. I put the device out and I model go and I encourage them to click go and then they go down the slide. And like, was the child doing it? Sure. But was it because they wanted to? Was it because they were intrinsically motivated to like communicate with you that way? Not really. It was just because I was like teaching them certain things. So that was way, way in the beginning. And then I started to shift, learning a little bit more about, reducing demands and more learning more about intrinsic motivation for communication. And then I feel like the session sort of started developing in just modeling and not providing, I feel like, enough supports on how to use the device. And then just modeling and recommending devices for kids that didn't have that back and forth interaction. And so I feel like we were kind of touching on the parent piece, just reflecting back on times that I feel like I've recommended a device and wondered back then, why can't the parent, kind of almost placing the blame on the parent, which is something we shouldn't be doing because if we're recommending something and it's not carrying over well, we should be reflecting on, well, why not? And a lot of times it's because, like you said, the parents trying to get them to just interact with something together. And then we're also placing this extra layer on them of like, oh, and model this and make sure you're like using these core words and have it out all the time. And I don't know if you've like experienced this too, which I'm sure you have, but a lot of these kids are busy. There's a lot of movement going on. And when I'm in my therapy gym, I often don't have time to grab the talker and have it right here because it's interfering with, our connection engagement. And so I think also the recommendation of, putting that on the parent of you have to have this out constantly. It's a lot for parents to, I think, digest that. For the ones that don't automatically see it as like, oh yes, this is going to be great for my child. Because I think a lot of parents and the ones that do really, really like AAC and that works really well are those are for the kids that are already interacting with the program. They're already looking at it and selecting things and looking through it. So I thought kind of answers your question. That was a bit of a tangent, but
Right. No, I think it's a really great point. I mean, for me, I primarily work with a lot of homeschool parents, and I'm also a Texan, so we, have different views down here. But a lot of these families, they don't want to use devices. And they don't want their child to be relying on technology. And a lot of parents say, well, what happens if something happens to the electrical grid? What happens in Texas? My child won't be able to communicate to me. And, there's the argument, well, your child can't communicate to you without the device.
yeah.
But if you can teach parents how to read nonverbal cues and the body language of the child, I think there is so much communication to be had and so much attunement that you can teach the parent. And then when the child is ready for some kind of next step, then kind of having that conversation. But do you have any parents that that are just against AAC or don't want to even try it for their kids?
Yeah, and I've had a lot of parents like that in my career, and I think something that I used to not understand is like I don't understand, I was like I don't get why they don't want to do it. I've, shown the research and I've let them know that this is important. But now I'm also a parent now, and so I just see things a little bit differently. And I also think you can definitely recommend it, and that's your professional recommendation, and you've explained everything to them and you've given them the research. But if they've looked at all of that, that's their decision to decide this is not for my family. And I think that's for us to just respect that. And you can, if it's a hard no, then maybe not revisit it. But, in the future, when the child may be showing more interest in using AAC or something, then maybe you revisit it. But yeah, I mean, I've definitely had parents who are not on board with it. And I think we just need to respect that and then shift, like you said, how can we help support them then in other ways to help their child's communication improve, if they're going to be a hard no on like an AAC device?
Right. Yeah. So let's kind of switch and talk about professionals, especially SLPs, because I think that we are taught in school, this is how it has to be, and this is what we need to
Yeah.
do. And once you get into the field and you start actually practicing, you're like, wait, what? I didn't learn
Yeah.
Autistic, or this doesn't apply. How do I even do
Yeah.
what you told me to do? For other SLPs who are really passionate about AAC and they automatically introduce it to a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old that is not yet really actively socially engaging. I mean, what would you, if you had the opportunity and you were in the room to be
Yeah.
able to talk to these professionals, what is one bit of advice or experience that you would share with them?
Yeah. I think I would be okay with them introducing it if the parent liked it and they were on board. But what I would want to know is, well, what is the session structure looking like? Do we have AAC just out as an option that we can model on occasionally? If I've found it helpful to record my own voice sometimes in the devices to model like sound effects, or, if a child's like a Gestalt language processor, sometimes I'll model in my own phrases that kind of helps us get a little more connection, especially if like a child has like is more interested in auditory input. I've actually found recording my own voice, recording silly sound effects can actually help engage and like get back to a connection with me. But I see it more as a tool and less of this should be the center and focus of our session. And instead, I'd be curious about, well, what are you doing in the session to keep back and forth interaction and to get more engagement and to expand on their circles of communication of the back and forth? And how are they using AAC in a supplement, but not making it the main priority for a child who doesn't have that back and forth interaction?
Right. Yeah. I think that's important. I think the back and forth really is key. And it can be done with AAC. It
Yeah.
absolutely can be done when I think the interaction is the priority and the
Yeah.
AAC is just a supplemental tool that's there to support. It's done very beautifully. I've seen it, been done very successfully. And I think that's great advice. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes we have our own strong opinions about certain things based on our experiences and our passions. And really, at the end of the day, every single person who's in this field just wants to be able to support kids better. And it's not necessarily about, oh, you're wrong or I'm right, or vice versa. It's really
Mhm.
about how can we share our experiences with each other
Yeah.
to be able to support everybody to just kind of think in a new capacity and reflect on these things and then take whatever they want from the conversation and be able to apply it into their therapy sessions. I think that's
Yeah.
extremely important.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would
Yeah.
100% agree.
Well, thank you so much
Yeah.
for talking with me today.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's a great conversation, and hopefully some other people will want to jump on board with the conversation.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested if anyone has any other experiences or what their opinions are, or, that would be great to hear. So.